Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Victory Monday, where the Minnesota Vikings in jolly old England yesterday took care of the New York Football Jets 23-17, moving to 5-0 on the season and extending the longest winning streak for the Minnesota Vikings, undefeated in the country of England since 793 AD. So we it wasn't easy, but Vikings defense won the day, got things done, and we are coming home on the bye week at 5-0, which is exactly where everybody preseason, all the national pundits, all of those people thought we would be. So with that, a lot of people in the chat already. Good evening, Dave. Good evening, Skull for Life Barber. Good evening, Doc. Good evening, Nympha. Welcome, welcome, welcome. As always, thank you guys all for joining. And let's kind of roll into it, shall we? Of course, the Vikings jump out to an early lead once again, up to 10-0 lead. And then the wheels kind of fell off on the offense. Sam Darnold got shaken up, had to come out for a couple of plays. And then when Nick Mullins came in, promptly threw a 24-yard pass on a critical play to Aaron Jones, who went up to get it and injured his hip on the way back down again. So, of course, he would not return to the game, and that situation there showed exactly how important Aaron Jones is to this offense. In the time he was in there, he had 7 carries for 29 yards. And after that, Ty Chandler, 14 carries for 30 yards, was about all they accomplished the rest of the game. And you could tell once the running game became non-existent, the offense sputtered and really wasn't able to do much else. Sunny, good evening. Jason, good evening. Doc loves the doubleheader shows here with me and Tyler, makes Mondays bearable. Yeah, that is true. If you didn't get a chance to, go back and watch the Real Forno show on Vikings First and Skull after the fact. They just got done here a little bit ago. So, yeah, glad everybody could join tonight. There's a ton of Vikings content shows out there, and I just want to say thank you to all you guys who decided to take a little time out of your evenings a couple nights a week to come talk football with me on Mondays and with Brunswick and I on the weekends. So again, big thank you to everybody for that. But yeah, back to the offensive side of things. Sam Darnold, he had a clunker game. There's no way around it. That was not a good game for Sam Darnold. 14 of 31 for 179 yards and an interception. That interception was a very, very poor throw. Overshot Jordan Addison by a good 5 yards. I don't know. I mean, get this out here. I've seen it on social media and stuff today all over the place already. A week ago, people were talking about extending Sam Darnold to a long-term contract and either letting J.J. McCarthy sit on the bench, or I've even saw things that were talking about trading McCarthy because Darnold has been so good. Now, a lot of those same people today, after Darnold had a clunker yesterday, are about ready to run him out of town. Knee-jerk nation at its finest. You got to love social media, Twitter, X, Facebook, all of those outlets where this stuff can freely flow. But I don't know, for Darnold, this is just my opinion, and take it for what it's worth, but it almost seemed to me like, and to Darnold's credit, he didn't play it up this week, anything like that, about, how important this was going against the Jets, the team that drafted him, the team that gave up on him, all this other kind of stuff. Uh, exactly before I die. Good evening. Bad interception to shot the ribs. Yep, that was the play I was talking about earlier, where he had to go out and Mullins threw that pass to Aaron Jones, where Jones got hurt that night. Yeah, that was a rough hit right to the chest on that one. So I'm sure that he was out for a couple of plays there. But back to my Darnold take here, along with the injury stuff, which I'm sure didn't help. Darnold, did what he needed to do during the week. This is just another game. I've moved past this, everything else. But we're all human. We all would have that in our mind that, this is the team that gave up on me. This team didn't believe in me, and I'm going out there and damn it, I'm going to show them that they made a mistake letting me go. And sometimes that can work in your favor. Sometimes that can work against you. And I think, again, my opinion, that worked against Darnold a bit yesterday. You could see it when he was throwing. Darnold has been remarkably accurate all season up to this point. Yesterday, his accuracy was way off. He was overshooting balls. He was not in sync with the wide receivers at all. And I'm almost wondering if he wasn't trying too hard to prove himself in this game against the Jets. And, he kind of got in his own head, and it kind of just, he overhyped himself and couldn't rein it in. And that does happen sometimes. Robert, good evening. Skull Mafia, good evening, my friend. Be that as it may, we survived a bad game by the offense because the defense came out and played lights out. They held the Jets to without a first down. It was like something like 17 minutes or something. It was well into the second quarter before the Jets even got a first down. And tell you what, for Aaron Rodgers being who he is, the player he has been, he is not that player anymore. He looked old. He looked confused. He looked, he looked like a guy who hadn't seen and done everything. The mad scientist, Brian Flores, and I was curious on how this was going to look this week, on how Flores was going to be able to disguise what he wanted to do, and enough to a point where you can confuse one of the better quarterbacks to have played National Football League in recent memory. I hate giving Rodgers credit, but credit where credit is due. Dan, good evening. Rib injuries do affect pretty much anything you do. Absolutely. Beating Rodgers and the Jets twice. It was beating Green Bay twice in 2 weeks. Yeah, I got it. It's probably petty, but I don't care. I love seeing when Aaron Rodgers starts doing that eye roll and all that stuff on the sidelines, because then you're getting in his head. And they did that yesterday. One thing I absolutely love is when Harrison Smith came on that blitz and he came free and just leveled Rodgers. He gets up and does Rodgers the discount double check championship belt celebration just to kind of poke the bear a little bit more. Harrison Phillips on that one absolutely leveled him. And then who was it? Ivan Pace had the third sack yesterday too. So that was, they got to Rodgers and they knocked him around. Even when they, right away they weren't quite getting there because they were throwing a lot of really quick passes and it didn't allow, the time for the pass rush to get there, which I kind of thought might happen. BS on the roughing call. Yeah, he slid into his leg. I get that the rule is the rule, but you got to use a little bit of common sense. So that whole, the drive leading up to that was the 3 and out. on every play, some player, at least one or two, slipped and fell. I mean, I think it was Garrett Wilson slipped and fell on that one pass play. There was a couple other ones that were skidding around because it had started raining. And, you got to use a little common sense when you're calling that kind of stuff there too. Sliding into them on the ground, there's not much you can do there. I mean, it's not like you can drop a boat anchor out and stop yourself, but Danner took a soul on the Gilly pick. Yeah, and that let's talk about the interception since Josh, we'll get to yours here in just a minute too, but since Doc brought it here, talk about the interceptions. 3 interceptions again yesterday. That is, I think it's 16 on the season now, something like that. We're leading the league in interceptions, but coming from, of course, the first one was who had the first one? Van Ginkel, of course. The guy is quickly becoming one of my favorite players on this team. Sneaky, one of the best free agent signings of the offseason, not just for the Vikings, but for in the NFL in general. And for the deal we got him for, I think we're paying him like 10 or 12 million a year to get the kind of to get the kind of production we're getting out of Van Ginkel for that. I mean, it's ungodly. Jason Grenard admitted Rodgers is figuring out the holes in the middle of the field. More changes need to evolve the defense. Yeah, and that's that's something that Flores will work on in this second half. Rodgers is going to find those. He is who he is for a Chad. We need to bring Kane back as RB2. I don't think Wangwu would be the answer at running back. I'm not. Ty Chandler had a bad game as well. It happens. He's played very well up to this point. Now, do we maybe need a little bit more in there than just he and Aaron Jones? It's possible. I don't know who's available out there. Again, we don't have much for trade capital. We'll go back to Gary. Good evening, by the way. Robert always asking, needing a second running back. Minnie makes a move before the trade line to get an impact player. Again, we have very little as far as draft capital to give up to go draft somebody unless you're giving up 2026 picks. We've got some money to spend, but we don't necessarily have the capital. And I don't think there's anybody on the team right now that you want to trade away and risk screwing up the chemistry and stuff that this team has. I mean, if picks weren't an option and stuff, Dexter Lawrence would be a guy I would love to have. You put him with Harrison Phillips on that front line, and would make the defense. Dexter Lawrence right now has 6.5 sacks as a nose tackle through 5 games. I mean, the guy is he's the epitome of an impact player, and I would love to have him on the team, but I don't think it's realistic, and I don't think the Giants want to trade him either. But back to the interceptions, we'll finish that off before we get back into some of this other stuff. Of course, and Cam Bynum, not too long after the Van Ginkel interception, Bynum comes down with one. And then the most important one, of course, as the Jets were driving at the end of the game for a potential winning touchdown, Rodgers throws another bad pass. It was low and behind Wilson, and Stephon Gilmore goes down and gets it and ends the game. And the Vikings defense came up big whenever we needed it yesterday. None bigger than that interception by Gilmore at the end of the game. Cashman all over the place again. Blake Cashman is another. There's a lot of people that were all worked up about letting Danielle Hunter go. I love Danielle Hunter, don't get me wrong, but when you replace Danielle Hunter with Jonathan Gennard, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Blake Cashman, I think that was a pretty good trade-off. We're getting way more out of there than Then what is Derrick Henry available? No, I don't think the Ravens are getting rid of Derrick Henry. Need to trade. Ty doesn't run fierce. I like Ty Chandler. I do. I thought he should have been RB1 last year. But I don't know who's out there right now that that would we'd be able to bring in. Like I said, we don't have the trade capital to go out and trade unless you're trading a player. And excuse me, I don't want to do that personally. Josh, just defense is good. And that's the thing a lot of people aren't taking into account with this stuff is the New York Jets have a top 5 defense. Robert Saleh is a very good defensive coordinator. I mean, the team is a shit show. A lot of that goes from Aaron Rodgers, and Nathaniel Hackett at offensive coordinator couldn't find his ass in the dark with 2 hands and a flashlight. Thank God that the Denver Broncos jumped on him when they did, trying to get Aaron Rodgers to go there, because there are rumors that the Vikings were actually interested in Nathaniel Hackett as head coach after Mike Zimmer was fired. And can you imagine ending up with Nathaniel Hackett instead of Kevin O'Connell? Don't even want to think about that. Jer, are you trading 2 firsts for Dexter Lawrence? That's probably what it would take to get him. If we had more draft capital, if we had a 2nd round pick, we had 3rd round pick, something like that, I'd consider it. But when right now all we have guaranteed to us is 3 picks next year, I don't know that you're going to go full Los Angeles Rams if you're going to do it. Now, if you make that move and ultimately we win a Super Bowl this year, then it's absolutely worth it. But, I honestly do not believe the Giants, especially the Giants, are starting to come around. They beat Seattle yesterday. So I don't think the Giants are going to be sellers on this market when it comes toward the trade deadline. This isn't like Major League Baseball. You start having a down year, you offload all of your high-priced talent. Dexter Lawrence, I believe, stays in New York. It's going to take a hell of a deal, and it would take probably 2 first-round picks, like Jer said. And I don't know that we can give that up right now. Robert wants Travis Etienne out of Jacksonville. I like Etienne. He's a very good running back. Jacksonville is in a bad situation right now. Now, Etienne, I think was he 3rd year in the league right now, or is he 4th year in the league? Because he's got to be coming up on contract fairly soon too. So that would be a relatively short deal, a year or 2 at best. Doc, I don't think there's anybody that we can afford to trade for, and don't think there's anybody sitting on the free agency couch. Not really. One to look at potentially. Cleveland has some good running backs over there, and I do believe Nick Chubb is eligible to come off IR now and potentially work his way into playing. So, that there might be something there. Gary Rodgers was seeing ghosts yesterday and probably today. Yeah, he's seeing several. He's seeing the ghosts of Harrison Smith for sure. And the interceptions. Probably woke up in cold sweat thinking about the Flores defense last night too. After Aaron Rodgers in his entire illustrious career had never thrown 2 interceptions in the first quarter until yesterday. 3 interceptions in one game. It ties the worst performance in his career. That's happened 3 times now. Drop off after AJ was a big reason for the offense struggle. Yeah, it was. It definitely was, because when Jones went out, there was, the play action went away, and the play action was, is how a lot of the success through the offense has been going. So, now at least preliminary indications are that Aaron Jones will be good to go for the Detroit game in 13 days. Now, if we had a game coming up this Sunday, I think it would have been questionable whether or not he would be able to play. But the bye week comes at a perfect time for that, and also gives enough time to get TJ Hawkinson back up to speed. They opened his practice window on Friday, and the intent is for him to make his 2024 season debut against Detroit again at US Bank Stadium in 13 days. Yeah, just what we were saying there, Josh. The way it's, we haven't heard anything official from the team yet because they didn't get back from London. They left London this morning. They got back middle of the afternoon. Kevin O'Connell will have a press conference tomorrow, and I believe Aaron Jones will be going in having an MRI just to make sure everything is okay tomorrow as well. MRI today, and maybe they did have it tonight when he got back. I don't know. I guess I don't know for sure. Adrian Peterson needs some cash. Yeah, Adrian Peterson can't do any. No. Yeah, he should be good for the Lions. AA Ron, yeah, you done fucked up, AA Ron, or however the that skit goes. Classic. But yeah, and like I said, anytime you can make Aaron Rodgers flustered, and there's definite. Brian, good evening. There's a definite, I think, schism brewing. Key and Peel, yep. Definite schism starting to brew in New York, and it's not only between Saleh and Rodgers. There was a couple times yesterday where I think he was a little peeved off at his buddy Nathaniel Hackett there too for not getting the play calls in time. Jets had a couple of delay of game penalties. Vikings had a couple again. It seems like we have those every week. At one point in time, Darnold is going to let the clock run out at some evening. Good evening, Steven. But yeah, looking back at some of this stuff, want to go look at some of the stats here real quick. We're going to roll over to the Jets, see what they did. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers, 29 of 54, 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. Pretty pedestrian day for an Aaron Rodgers. But this is the big thing here. The Jets, that was one of their keys to coming in and thinking that they could beat the Vikings was to be able to run the ball. Breece Hall, 9 carries, 23 yards. That's a 2.56 yards per carry. And Braylon Allen, 5 carries for 13 yards, 2.6 yards per carry. We limited the Jets' offense to 14 rushing attempts for a grand total of 36 yards on the ground. This rushing defense for this team is extremely good. And as we talked about some of these, one of the things was concerned about that front seven being able to stop the run. They have been, I still think they're still first in the league in rushing defense through 5 games. They're not given, and part of it is, again, with jumping out to that big lead that they have in pretty much every game they've played. The other teams are being forced to abandon the run and start throwing the ball. I mean, Rodgers threw the ball 54 times yesterday. Also, why the Vikings, being first or second in most defensive categories other than pass yards given up, they were 32nd in passing yards going into the weekend because they've been up on all these guys so bad that they have to just sit there and throw the ball and throw the ball and throw the ball to try to get back into the games. And to the defense's credit, yeah, they're kind of doing a little bend but don't break, but they're getting the sacks, they're getting the interceptions. They're leading the league in both right now. Now, is that something that's sustainable? I don't know if it is. I hope it is, but time will tell. But we're going to have, and Lance and I talked about this quite a bit, and that the defense was going to win us some games this year. There were going to be games where the offense was going to struggle, and the defense was going to have to pick it up. This was the first one that they've done that. It's probably going to happen again before the end of the season. As long as we win, statistics are what they are. They're great and everything else, but at the end, the only statistic that matters is whether or not you won the game. It doesn't matter if your quarterback throws for 20 yards or 320 yards. I got a couple more questions here. Rodgers, kind of dumb. He keeps having these interpersonal heats with coaches after how he was led at Green Bay. I don't think he's good enough to warrant the headache. I mean, he's going to be 41 years old in a couple of months here too. I don't think Rodgers has that much time left in the league. I don't think, he's not going to play as long as Tom Brady did. Half the time this year, to me, it seems like Rodgers doesn't necessarily even want to be playing football right now. The reason why he's doing it is because he's in the New York media market and he's getting attention. And we all know Aaron Rodgers is an attention whore. So that is what's fueling him to still go out there and play. It's not that he loves the game and wants to be out there to win games and to be with his teammates and all that other stuff. He wants the attention. Same thing. The reason why he goes on Pat McAfee's show once a week, to get attention, to do, his ayahuasca tea retreats and the darkness stuff and all that other garbage that makes people talk about Aaron Rodgers. And that is what has always fueled Aaron Rodgers, is attention. Beefalo is the MVP at this point in the season. He is definitely, I would say, the most valuable assistant in the league right now. I mean, you look at the only other options are, maybe like Steve Spagnuolo over in Kansas City. You got, what's his name, Ben Johnson in Detroit, but I'm not. I mean, Ben Johnson's a good offensive coordinator, don't get me wrong, but he's better than or not as good as he thinks he is. Josh, kind of reminding you that Williams Wall on the rushing stuff. I mean, the statistical stuff is very similar right now, and we're doing it without big name. I mean, Harrison Phillips is a quality starter in this league. Jerry Tillery, quietly, he doesn't show up in the stat line all that much, but he's in there. He's clogging up the middle. Just looking here to see. Yeah, Tillery had 2 tackles yesterday. So, I mean, not showing up, but he's in there and he's clogging holes and allowing other people to make the plays. And that's, they're collapsing that pocket in front there too. But that's another thing with the team in general, is they're not concerned with the individual stats and that kind of stuff. They're not caring who makes the play as long as somebody does. If somebody has to throw themselves into the pile to allow somebody else to make a tackle, they're going to do that. Corey, bye week is coming a pretty clutch time, current injury report. And we talked about that a little bit earlier. Darnold, got his ribs smacked yesterday. I'm guessing he's going to be a little sore for a couple of days. Preliminary indications on Aaron Jones is that they're hoping he'll be ready for the Detroit game in 13 days. Having an MRI, it was either this afternoon or right away tomorrow morning. So we'll see for sure there. TJ Hawkinson started practicing on Friday. The plan is for him to be back for the Detroit game. So by and large, the team is fairly healthy. A few nicks and bruises and things like that here and there, but everything at least looks decent. Josh, creating confusion causes sacks and turnovers. Exactly right. And that's how the Vikings have been able to be so successful on defense this year, is that organized chaos, as they're calling it, the illusion of complexity. They're putting 8 guys up in the box and then dropping off in cover 2, or, having guys hang back and then blitz at the last minute. Flores isn't showing his entire body work, hasn't had to. Absolutely. And he's continuously coming up with stuff. He said this way back when we first hired him, when they asked him what kind of a defense he's running, and his answer to that question, I thought was pretty telling at that point, and it's starting to come to fruition. I don't know, who are we playing next week? He doesn't have, like a lot of these defensive guys, Mike Zimmer was one of them, not the only one, but, just one prime example of it, that has their system and they're going to run that system no matter what, whether it matches up well against the current opponent or not. They're just going to keep doing that. Flores adjusts every week to whoever they're playing. And so far this week, it's been successful. Or so far this season, sorry. Doc says before on other pods, I'm okay with winning ugly. Bar tabs are bigger, but fuck it, worth the win. Absolutely. I will take an ugly victory over a pretty loss any day of the week, as I'm sure everybody else will too. I know it's kind of cliche to say, but it is what it is. I mean, yeah, I don't care if we slug it out and win 6-3 or turn around and win 43-10. As long as there's a W in the column at the end of the game, that's all I'm concerned with. And we take this as far as this will go. Truman, good evening. Welcome to the show. Jerry, yes, we are home versus Detroit. Now there's talk that game could potentially be flexed to the afternoon. Right now it's a 12 o'clock game. There's some rumblings that Fox might want to push it to the 3:25 game. As of right now, though, that would have to be decided here in the next couple of days. But as of right now, it's a noon Sunday at US Bank Stadium. NFC North is no joke this season. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Green Bay won again yesterday. They're sitting at 3-2. Granted, their 3 victories are against the Tennessee Titans, the Indianapolis Colts, and the Los Angeles Rams, who basically are scraping people up off of park benches and putting them out there to play because they're so injured right now. But 3-2 is 3-2. They have to play a lot of the same tough competition that we've already played. Again, to Robert's point exactly here, schedule's brutal and they just went through it all. Yeah, everybody said this first 6 games, when you count the Detroit game of the Vikings season, is an absolute gauntlet. You know, they were saying, well, the Vikings could come out of here 1-5. They could come out of here, 2-3 at best. Well, the absolute worst we can do out of the first 6 is 5-1. And I don't know about you guys, but I don't want the first loss of the season to come to the Detroit Lions because after, decades and decades and decades, Detroit just, was the little brother that was just there. But after one season of success getting the NFL or NFC championship game, the Detroit Lions have become and again, this is not everybody, but a chunk of their fan base has become some of the most insufferable sons of bitches out there right now. They act like they're the 2017 Patriots or some juggernaut like that's been at the top of the league for decades. US Bank will erupt if Hawk scores against the Lions, guessing he'll not play too many snaps his first game back. Yeah, I mean, they'll probably have him on a snap count. Depends on how he's looking. I mean, they're not going to put him out there if they don't think he's ready. He's got 21-day window and he's got like 17 days left on that window. So, they would have to activate him. If he doesn't play against Detroit, he would have to be activated for the next game. Otherwise, he'd end up going on IR for the season. AFC division matches are very favorable this system. Yeah, you start looking up once we get past the Detroit game, then we start getting into a quote-unquote easier part of the schedule. We have Tennessee, we have Jacksonville, we have the Colts, I believe. 3 very winnable games right now. We end up with the Arizona Cardinals, who surprisingly beat San Francisco yesterday. Then a couple other, I don't remember who else we have non-conference wise. Of course, we still have Chicago in that next mix. Chicago blew the doors off Carolina yesterday, but it's Carolina, so I'm not going to anoint the fact that, but the national media wants Caleb Williams to be the guy so badly that they're just absolutely slobbering over Chicago yesterday. You beat the worst team, arguably the worst team, at least in the NFL, with one of the worst defenses in recent memory. I mean, they could play a JV team from Podunk Hills Central High School, and it wouldn't be a whole lot worse than what Carolina's trotting out there on the field right now. Good evening, Reg. Not surprised by Arizona. They've gotten a lot better. Getting in Marvin Harrison Jr. doesn't hurt that situation. Kyler Murray has played pretty decent so far. Now, I think by the time we play Arizona, I believe the new Call of Duty comes out, so maybe that starts affecting him again. The numbers are there. He plays well up until that time, and then starts dropping off. The Browns with Deshaun Watson, yeah, that is a absolute train wreck. I know there were a lot of people in the Vikings fan base that at the time Deshaun Watson was available that wanted to go after him. I'm glad we didn't. I will say I was somewhat intrigued by it at that point in time, just because Deshaun Watson had been good in Houston. Now the whole off the field stuff, I've always said that I would cheer for Satan himself if he led the Vikings to a Super Bowl. Deshaun Watson, I'm glad we don't have that mess to deal with. I'm just going to put it that way. He's Cleveland's problem. They made that god-awful trade with the god-awful contract, and they're stuck with it right now. So glad the Bears didn't draft Daniels. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about Jaden Daniels for a little bit. That kid is legit. He's doing it. The Commanders don't have a ton of weapons. I mean, you got Terry McLaurin, and that's really about it. The running game is okay. But that is a place, talking about the Davante Adams thing where he's trying to, they're working on trying to trade him to get him out of Vegas. Washington makes a ton of sense to me for a landing spot for Davante Adams. You put Davante Adams and Terry McLaurin on that offense, as well as what they've been doing so far. That's a scary thought. Commanders are no joke right now. They're 4-1. They're the second best team in the NFC right now, right behind us. Detroit's the only other 4-1. Daniels would have balled anywhere. But if anybody could have screwed him up, it would be Chicago. In all honesty, the only team that scares me left in the schedule is the Lions if we're healthy. If we take care of business against the Lions, we can beat Detroit. I'm not overly scared about Detroit. Their offense can put up a ton of yards, but you can throw for a ton of yards on that defense. I mean, they did stuff to try to make it better in the offseason, but, and they've got some young talent now at cornerback, but they will still give up a ton of yards and a ton of points. Aiden Hutchinson up front is no joke. Detroit's 3-run. So yeah, you're right, Dave. They had to buy it this week. You're right. Washington is 4-1. They're the only 4-1 team. Detroit's 3-1. And everybody else has at least 2 losses, I believe. Dallas is 3-2. Washington 4-1. Green Bay, Chicago are 3-2. Seattle's 3-2. The last game may be important. It very well could come down to that. Now, if the Vikings maintain the current trajectory they're on, that last game might not matter. But, let's not get ahead of ourselves with that. We got to still take this at one game at a time. I know it's, as Vikings fans, we all know we start getting this build up with, when the team starts seeing success and things like that. And then we start looking, you start seeing all these stats about, oh yeah, of the 5 teams that started 5-0 since 2000, there's 5 teams who started since 2000 that have not made the playoffs, and the Vikings are 2 of them or something, 2003, 2016. It's easy to fall into that trap to go back and look. Yeah, the Vikings, this team, I believe this team is different. You start looking at the players are all saying it, that there's just something different in this locker room and how they feel and the culture and everything going on. And there's all of this that makes it seem like this year feels different. It may end up the same as it always does, Ryan, the 2016 comparison is so dumb. It absolutely is. I mean, of course, that was the year that, Teddy Bridgewater's knee exploded a week before the season started. We had to go trade for Sam Bradford, who started off the season 5-0, and then we went 3-5 or 3-8 the rest of the way and missed it. Need to stay healthy. The bottom line, be a big drop if Darnold or Jones are out any prolonged length of time. I'm going to put it this way. If Nick Mullins can stop throwing interceptions, the guy can play, but he just makes a lot of stupid decisions, when he's asked to go out and play a full game. Now we saw, that ball he threw yesterday. Yeah, 24-yard pass, but he threw it high. If he would have been able to hit Jones in stride, Jones scores on that play and never gets hurt. Going up on that, up to get it, when he got hit and came down, that's when he got injured. So there's that. But if Sam goes down with no McCarthy, we're back to what we were last year, and that doesn't entice me at all. Vikings fans are pissed at Lions. We have 2 weeks to prepare. That place to be deafening. Yeah, you look back at how loud Reggie, you can speak to this yourself because you were at that Houston Texans game, how loud the crowd got in that game. And a division matchup, first place on the line in the North right now, beating Detroit in that game is paramount, and the fans will show up. And if we start fast like we have done every game so far this year, Detroit's not going to know what hit them. Call my shot. Vikings will score the most points of the season against Detroit. That's very possible. I could easily see us hanging 35 to 40 points on Detroit. Now, conversely, Detroit can turn around and score just as many points. So it's going to be paramount that the defense is able to keep doing what they've been doing, get Jared Goff off his spots, make him throw some interceptions, knock him on the ground. Mullins is a gunslinger with an effort attitude. Full year starting, he'd likely have 30 touchdowns, 30 picks. Yeah, you're not wrong. Ready to go into the Vikings game against the Colts. Might go to another. Yeah, the wife and I are looking at trying to get to a game this year. She's never been to a football game, so I'd like to take her down to a game. Looking at maybe the Cardinals game, maybe the Colts game. I'm not sure. Just kind of have to see how the schedule rolls and how expensive tickets are. Have to try to figure that out, but that's a little ways down the road yet, so I'm not too worried about that. Excellent point, Riley. If the Vikings can shut down Gibbs and Montgomery, will win that game. Montgomery has had a hell of a season just so far. He's playing probably the best he's ever played. He was always good when he was with Chicago, and he's gotten better when he's in Detroit. Of course, having that offensive line that Detroit has helps anybody with that. So that's going to be a big key, I think, too, is the Vikings pass rush going up against that offensive line. Free barbecue for all, right? Yeah. Hey, I'll take some of Reggie's barbecue anytime I can get some. Detroit going to blink and be down 20. I hope so. Jets with some bad drops yesterday. Yeah, he's had some uncharacteristic drops this year. I think he's had like 4 or 5 so far. It's going to come on occasion. Some of that yesterday, I think, was Darnold being a little bit off. Now, there was at least one of those early on that he had that he should have caught. He just plain dropped that one. It was a perfect throw, and now the one nice thing we saw yesterday is, how many times, I think, would they have 5 either pass interference or defensive holding calls against the wide receivers going out there. So, Jefferson still ended up with 92 yards, but I think he had probably close to that, probably 50 at least in penalty yards from drawing the defensive pass interferences. So, Doc, is that jam finger an issue? It could be. I think that was part of the problem the last game where he had a couple of drops, and maybe it's still bugging him a little bit. He's just not letting on to it. Detroit problem think that were the Vikings of last year. Were not, absolutely. And that's a lot of the Detroit fans I've seen out there talking about this has been into that. Oh, yeah, we beat you twice. Like, you guys gave up 800 yards passing in 2 games to Nick Mullins. Let that sink in. 800 yards passing to a backup quarterback in 2 games. I know they've made some changes and stuff like that, but it's still that same defense. So I think the Vikings can make some hay against this offense or the Detroit defense coming up in 2 weeks. It's all good. Now, back to the thing we're talking about a little while ago about Darnold. You know, he had a clunker of a game. There's no arguing that. But the key is going to be, you know, coming off of that, are we going to go back and are we going to see the Sam Darnold that won September Player of the Month and Offensive Player of the Week twice, I think, in that month? Or are we going to see the Sam Darnold that we saw yesterday? You know, one bad game, everybody has him. Patrick Mahomes has him. Tom Brady had him. All the best players have had him. Aaron Rodgers got his ass handed to him yesterday. But what separates the good quarterbacks from the bad quarterbacks is how do you respond after you have a game like that? Detroit might be the toughest game of the season to date. I think it's going to be. I believe the true competition in the NFC right now for the Vikings is Detroit. You know, I think we can beat Detroit. I'm not scared of them. You have to respect what they're doing, but they can be beaten. It's a division game. Anything can happen. Darnold made some mistakes. Jets D is very legit. Yep. Geno Smith passed all over Detroit. Yeah. And that's the point I'm making. You know, that Detroit, you can score and you can put up points against Detroit, against their defense. But yeah, that offense, especially their run game, Montgomery has been the engine that's been making that offense work. Now, Jared Goff, last week didn't throw an incompletion for the entire game. That's that's a big deal there. I mean, he was a little slow to start, but he's starting to come around. So that's going to be a key that we got to work on too. Why is KOC running a JJ ratio offense? I blame him more than Sam. I don't know that it's Kevin O'Connell forcing it all the time. You know, when you call the play, you have different levels of all this stuff. And I don't know if it was Darnold forcing the ball there, you know, because he had several options. Multiple times when they tried throwing deep yesterday, they had Johnny Munt open underneath or one of the other guys in that short to intermediate. And it seemed like Darnold wasn't really even looking at that stuff. Because it happened 3 or 4 times that I saw looking back at some of the highlights that there was a guy open underneath and Darnold, you know, he just seemed like he was going to go back and throw deep on every chance he got. And I think that leads back to that point that he wanted to have a big game against the Jets. And, you know, throwing big chunk plays and stuff like that was how he thought he was going to get there. And he overhyped himself, and I think it cost him. Hutchinson versus Darisaw going to be a dogfight, like our wide receivers and Hawk versus those DB linebackers. Yep, absolutely. If Darnold has time, should be no contest. That's going to be the biggest thing, is keeping Hutchinson at bay. He's going to get his. I have no doubt about that. But limiting the damage that front 7 does, front 4 especially, is going to be key. Losing the running game didn't help Sam either. No run game. Yep, you're right, Doc. We talked about that before. And it's still a big thing from last year. We didn't have much of a running game, and it hurt. Showing that we've had a running game this year has made a big difference. And we saw just how big it was yesterday when Aaron Jones went out. Hutch might play against O'Neal more than Darisaw. Bench pressed him last year. Yeah, now to Brian O'Neal's credit, he has not given up a sack this year, and I think only one pressure. So he's had a hell of a season so far. Now, again, Aiden Hutchinson is probably the best edge rusher that he's faced so far. So going to be a dogfight either way. Hey, Marie, good evening. Congratulations on 5-0. Never thought you would this year, but see what we can do. Interesting. You think guys contender? How are your prediction? Right now, yeah. I believe that the Vikings can beat any team in the NFC. I mean, we've already beaten San Francisco. We beat Green Bay. You know, we've looked good in several spots. It's been some of these games are going to be dogfights. We know that. Detroit game is going to be a dogfight, and people are going to take punches. They're going to go back and forth. But I mean, right now the Vikings have only trailed for 3 minutes and 26 seconds for the entire season. And that came in that game right off the get-go where against the Giants when that CJ Ham fumble and the Giants of all teams went and scored that field goal right off the get-go. So again, is that maintainable? I don't know that it is, but of the 6 teams that have done that, or the top 6 teams for time, I think Vikings are sitting 4th or 5th right now. All 6 have at least made the Super Bowl. So that, of course, if anybody's going to break that trend, it'll be the Vikings. But stuff that's pointing in our favor as well on that. We have the O-line and D-line advantage. Detroit's O-line is better than ours, I believe. On the tackles, I think we outdo them on the tackles. It's the interior of the line. Garrett Bradbury, again, he is who he is. I'm not sold on Bradbury. I'm probably never going to be sold on Bradbury. Ingram is questionable. Now, he's had his spots. Blake Brandel has played very well, I think, at left guard, so we may have that one sewed up, but it's still that interior that's the big question. Like the Hawk jersey, the throwback version. Some running backs need to get that warm-up rhythm. Ty just needs to get some positive plays, gets confident. Ty has played well for most of the season. He's had some big games. He had 80 yards rushing against, I think it was Green Bay or Houston, one of the two. So, I mean, he's had good games. He had a poor game yesterday against a very good Jets defense. The Jets are very good against the run. And that was part of the issue. And we have to remember that. We just can't, have the knee-jerk reaction. Oh, my God, Ty Chandler's a bust. We need to get rid of him. Or, same thing. Darnold had a bad game. Oh, my God, 5-alarm fire. No, we just need to sit back, realize that we played a very good defense, and we still came out with a win. So, Chris, sucks how bad the offense regressed the last 2 games, second half. Should put the foot on the gas for 60 minutes. I agree. There's a fine line between being aggressive and being careless and reckless, and I think the Vikings have teetered over the top of that line a couple of times. Who did we play to? The top 5 defense. Yeah, the Jets were top 5 in defense. San Francisco was right up there in defense. The Texans are sitting at 4-1 right now. They've got a very good defense, and we absolutely blew the doors off the Texans. So this team can play against anybody. That doesn't concern me. We have to cut down on the turnovers because the turnovers are still a problem. They were last year. They are this year. It's just that the defense has been bailing us out by creating more turnovers than we're giving up. I don't know if that is sustainable. Bradbury is a liability. Yep, absolutely. Just what I was talking about. Only weak link is Ingram. Bradbury is a weak link too. I don't care what anybody says. Bradbury sucks like Monchichi's at Ingram crap. Without the penalties, Ty would have had 60 yards plus. That's true, Reggie. Ty had that one long run where he broke it off the side, and we get a holding penalty, or it was illegal block in the back by Ingram, who didn't even need to do it because the play was already past him. So stupid penalties. We had 11 penalties yesterday, and that hurt us out a ton as well. Got to clean that stuff up. They're going to have to work on that the next 2 weeks here as they get ready for Detroit, because you're going to need every advantage you can to not let Detroit be in that game and think that they're going to come in there and just work us. KOC needs to bury teams. Yeah, he does. The Vikings have more interceptions than touchdowns given up. You're not wrong. That's a very, very telling stat with what's happened so far. Also, if you look at the Detroit Lions, I think their top receivers, I think one has 3 touchdowns. St. Brown, I think, has 2 touchdowns. Andrew Van Ginkel has 2 touchdowns. Van Ginkel has as many touchdowns as any wide receiver on the Detroit Lions roster at the moment. Ashton Janty in purple next year. God, would I love that. Putting him in this offense. Oh, my God. But he's going to go, unless the Vikings completely just crash from here on out, he's going to be gone long before the Vikings pick. That guy is an absolute monster. I would love to see him in a Vikings uniform, but I don't see it happening. When you expect your defense to get multiple turnovers, kind of gives you confidence in any game. Yeah, it does. And that was, I'm sitting there thinking at the beginning of the game, well, it's Rodgers. You get 1, maybe 2 interceptions off him if you're lucky. And we got 3. So, I mean, that was good. Question with Jonty is where has this been? I mean, sometimes it takes these guys a little while for it to break out. And this year he's breaking out. Now, again, yeah, you make a good point, Reggie. Is this a 1-year wonder, or is this what you're going to expect to get out of him when he makes the NFL? Because, I mean, we'll find that out next year, I guess. Discussing act, this is still a year to grab a running back. And I think they probably do. A lot of it's going to depend on how the rest of the season goes with Aaron Jones. If Jones continues to play the way he has played, I would like to bring him back again next year because he's only on a 1-year deal. But, we're still too early in the season to talk about that kind of stuff. But we got a lot to go over here the next week as we have the bye week going in. Running backs are seeing a resurgence. Teams that didn't pay running backs are kicking themselves. A little bit, I think you might have a point. I mean, the NFL is a cyclical thing. The passing guys are up there for a little bit, then it goes back down. Now, tight ends last year were absolutely insane all over the place. Now, this year, the tight end position is down across the league. Even guys like Mr. Taylor Swift, he's having a down year. Laporta in Detroit is having a way down year. The unicorn down in Atlanta, we expected him to start having big numbers with Kirk Cousins throwing the ball. He's not putting up those numbers that were expected. Going to be interesting to see how the things change when Hawkinson comes back next week. Is he going to get involved in the game? Is he going to be that 8 to 10 catch a game guy like he was a lot of times with Cousins last year? Could be interesting to see. Closest offseason after a Super Bowl run. Yep, absolutely. Packers tight end had a big game yesterday. Yeah, he's playing quite well. South Dakota State kid. I like him, but he plays for Green Bay, so I don't like him. We'll put it that way. Thoughts on Darnold at the end of the year? Will you switch to JJ? JJ McCarthy is the quarterback for 2025. That is the plan. That has always been the plan. And the Vikings work to get out from underneath that big money quarterback contract that we were saddled with Kirk Cousins for the last 6 years, in order to build the team up around a young quarterback on a rookie scale deal to be able to afford, these guys, extend a Cam Bynum, go get a big name defensive tackle, to put up front, add more weapons, look possibly at getting a upgrade at center or right guard, or, filling in those holes with that. If Sam Darnold continues on the trajectory that he does and, gets to free agency next year, he's going to get a pretty decent contract. He's going to be looking, say just for example, the Vikings go 11-6. Sam Darnold is a reason why the Vikings have gotten that far. Darnold's going to get probably 40 mil plus a year next year somewhere. He's going to get a Baker Mayfield style contract someplace. And I don't think the Vikings want to be able or to get themselves back in that spot right now. Their plan is to have the 4 more years of rookie scale deal with JJ McCarthy, who, I believe JJ McCarthy, he is the future of this team. Kevin O'Connell believes it. Kwesi believes it. I believe the team believes it. And, the kid is a winner. The kid has won everywhere he's gone. He's got that mojo. He's got all that stuff, and he is the future. Sam Darnold, I believe, short of maybe being a Super Bowl MVP, then they may reconsider that. But Sam getting 40 next year, good for him. Yeah, and more power to him. And let Sam Darnold, God bless him for everything he does this year and how far he takes us, whether it be the Super Bowl, whether it be, someplace else in the playoffs. It's going to be one of those things where we thank you for what you've done. Now, if you want to stay around and on a deal, in that 10 to 15 million, like we're paying him this year to be a backup, absolutely you come back. But, with the quality of quarterback play around the league, if Sam Darnold continues on the path where he is, he's going to get paid by somebody next year. Now, again, you have to weigh that with, okay, am I going to go to some, the Carolina Panthers, for example? I mean, he wouldn't go there because he's already been there and left. But, some other random team that would decide they would want to sign him. Is he going to have the same success that he had under Kevin O'Connell's system? I don't think that he does. Now, if he would go someplace like Miami, for example, where you have the same weapons, style of weapons you have there, I could see him being successful down there. And with, who knows what's going to happen with Tua between now and then. But I think it's not a zero possibility, but it is a very low possibility that the Vikings would re-sign Sam Darnold next year to be the starting quarterback. We'll put it that way. Sam's only 27. Yeah, he's still young. He came into the league at 20. We have to remember that. I mean, he was younger coming in than what JJ McCarthy is. So Ashton averaging over 5 yards after contract, 10 per 10. Yeah. Yeah, over 1,000 yards in 5 games. I mean, that's incredible. But anyway, we've gone over an hour here tonight, folks. I hadn't planned on going this long, but great conversations, great stuff coming up. You guys always bring it with the comments, the questions, the discussions. I love doing this show. I love talking to you football with you guys each and every week. Big thank you again. Sam Darnold being younger than Josh Allen. He's younger than a lot of these, what they consider young quarterbacks. On pace to break Barry's record. Yep. But anyway, about all I got for tonight. So want to again thank everybody. Shout out to the Filipino fan club. Shout out to my lovely wife who is watching and reminded me to shout her out on the show tonight. So shout out to all you guys in the chat as well. Again, really enjoyed hitting the talk, hitting the discussions. Programming note, Saturday night, 7 p.m. we'll have the studio show. with Brunswick and myself. So make sure you tune in for that. And then we will preview going into the bye week and have a bunch of stuff to talk about on, we'll have the latest on the Aaron Jones thing, where the Hawkinson thing is sitting. Jordan Addison had his court date, or is having his court date today as well. We'll see if anything comes out of that. So there's something that bears watching as well. We'll keep an eye on all that stuff. We'll talk all about it on Saturday night, 7 p.m. And with that, you guys have a great rest of your evening. Go watch some Monday Night Football. Kansas City and the Saints going at it right now. So we'll see how that goes. But again, thank you everybody for joining. Have a good night. We'll catch you on Saturday. Skol Vikes.